This country is well known for producing some incredible poets. That's what we're going to focus on today. Top 5 Canadian poets in music. The ones who with just their words can reach in, transport you to another time and place, tell you stories, tell you things you maybe never thought about before. The ones who can grip you from start to finish. That's today's Top 5. Before we get to today's Top 5, we got to take a look at some honorable mentions, and there are many in the Canadian songwriting field, but in the honorable mention category, I'm going to put Neil Young, a great Winnipegger and a fantastic songwriter. You look at the poetry of things like Harvest Moon and Old Man, just some great songs all the way around. He's going to get an honorable mention. Also, honorable mention going out to the boys of Great Big Sea, Bob, Sean, and Alan. It takes a special skill to write a song that sounds like it's already 250 years old, and these guys have done it by adding some of their very own sea shanties to the Celtic classics that make up Atlantic Canada. So I'm going to put them in the honorable mention category, and to represent Western Canada in the honorable mentions, Corb Lund as well. His storytelling ability for telling the stories of Alberta and the Prairie provinces, absolutely untouched. So those guys are going to be our honorable mentions for today. At number 5, it's so hard to whittle down, it's actually kind of turned into a bit of a top 6, because number 5 is going to be shared between Gord Downie and Buffy Sainte-Marie. Gord Downie, of course, the lead singer of the Tragically Hip. Unfortunately, we lost him much too early in 2017, but he left us with a plethora of amazing songs. His writing skills, so good. Things like New Orleans is Sinking, 38 years old, 50 Mission Cap at the 100th Meridian, Bob Cajun. There's so many great songs you can look at, and Gord Downie's such a part of Canadian pop culture. When you're talking great Canadian writers, he's got to be on the list. A Canadian poet through and through. He's going to be at number 5, joined by Buffy Sainte-Marie. Buffy has done absolutely everything in the world of music, from being a singer and a songwriter to being an Oscar-winning composer. Yes, in 1983, she became the first Indigenous person to win an Academy Award for her song Up Where We Belong from the movie An Officer and a Gentleman. That won an Oscar that year, and she has been an absolutely incredible Canadian storyteller for her entire life, and awarded the Order of Canada as well. So her name has to be on this list. So at number 5, it's shared between Gord Downie and Buffy Sainte-Marie. At number 4, we've got the late, great Stan Rogers, another guy taken way too soon. He was only 33 years old when he passed away in 1983. But this was a guy with a very special skill. This was someone who was born in Ontario, but was the child of a couple of Maritimers, and each and every summer he would go back to Nova Scotia to visit some family. And it was in the Maritimes where he felt truly at home, and he would become the voice for maritime music throughout the 70s and the 80s, writing some absolutely incredible songs, tales of Atlantic Canada, and his ability to storytell from a Celtic folk kind of point of view was absolutely unmatched. Songs like the Mary Ellen Carter, the Northwest Passage, some people have said should be Canada's national anthem. Things like Barrett's Privateers, which is an unofficial anthem for the Maritimes. So many great songs from the Maritimes, from Atlantic Canada, came from the pen of Stan Rogers. His poetry unrivaled in that area. He's got to be number 4. At number 3, another guy who wrote a song that some have said should be Canada's national anthem. It is Ian Tyson, still going strong at the age of 87. Ian was great no matter what position he was in, from a rocker in the group The Sensational Stripes to joining up with Sylvia Fricker, being Ian and Sylvia, being part of Great Speckled Bird by himself. People wanted to see Ian Tyson, and they wanted to hear the songs that came from his mind, and he gave us some absolutely incredible ones, including Four Strong Winds, one that has had some people saying it should be Canada's national anthem. Four Strong Winds is one of the most beautifully poetic songs in Canadian history, and CBC listeners agreed, because in 2005 they voted that that was the greatest Canadian song of all time. And if you're the writer of that one, you've got to be on this list. Ian Tyson, he's number 3. At number 2, it is Canada's folk poet laureate, Gordon Lightfoot, still going strong at the age of 82. This is a guy who has given us some of the most classic songs of all time. Things like Sundown, If You Could Read My Mind, and everybody remembers the classic from 1975, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. His ability to weave poetry and history into one song and made it absolutely memorable. This is a guy who has represented Canada well on the international stage for so long, and his songs, absolute poetry. Gordon Lightfoot, he's at number 2. Number one, it absolutely has to be Stompin Tom Connors. Nobody could mix poetry and Canadian history like Stompin Tom, teaching us stories about our past that maybe had been forgotten or we didn't even know about. You take a look at so many of his songs with real Canadian historical events as the backdrop. Things like Tillsonburg, the tale of Wap May, the bridge came tumbling down, Big Joe Mufferaw, and so many more. He was our voice of Canadian music. Stompin' Tom Connors. There was nobody better at getting the crowd into it either than the man with the board under his boot. So he's got to be number one. It's Stompin' Tom, the number one Canadian poet. Thank you very much for joining us for this week's edition of Top 5 Tuesday. Let us know in the comments what you thought about today's list, who should have made the list, where people should have ranked, where your rankings are, who's your number one Canadian poet. Let us know in the comments down below, and we'll be back again next week with a brand new edition of Top 5 Tuesday.